Welcome to the EarthWorks podcast, where our team will share the jargon of carbon from many of our turf friends from the past 30 years.
Hello all and welcome to the EarthWorks podcast. This week I'm your host, Mr. Jack Higgins, and I'm here recording this intro, this monologue to a mashup podcast, a little holiday season thing. So I've got some clips put together for the podcast this week of some interesting interviews over the last couple of years. But I want to take the opportunity to just kind of recap where we are coming into the winter season. And winter season in our business is, of course, trade show and conference season, and that's really already started for us. So you've maybe seen us out there at a local trade show. I know that I've been to the Carolinas, which was in the middle of November, down in Myrtle Beach, which is a great annual event. And we've hosted some academies in the Carolinas lately. In the last couple of weeks, we hosted a great academy. Sea Pines Resort hosted a great academy, the EarthWorks Soil First Academy, and that was a good time. You should be on the lookout in your area this winter and spring for some EarthWorks academies coming to you. Last week I was over in Atlantic City for the NJ Green Expo, which is always a great time at the Borgata. And there was some, all the fellows were out all around the country. I know Joel and Kevin were out in the Pacific Northwest and up into Canada as well with the British Columbia Golf Course Superintendents Association. Joel was speaking there. So you should be finding us out on the road. Plus, we're all geared up for the annual national conferences. Sports Turf is in Daytona in January, and we'll all be together in Phoenix for the Golf Industry Show. So without much further ado, I want to introduce the podcast clips from this week. The first clip comes to you from the podcast interview with Mr. Jay Monaco, the co-owner with his brother of Paul's Best Lawn Care in Northern Virginia. And I selected this clip because Jay's a great guy and is super insightful, but his passion really came through in this because he spoke so highly about what his business, which he and his brother bought from his father, as he explains, how much it means, that legacy really means to him, and how proud he is of building upon that legacy with carbon-based fertility, with biological soil management. He's proud to have added that to the legacy of Paul's Best Lawn Care. And he talks very eloquently about the success that he sees with it, and it's something that's easily measured in your own business, right? He sees the success in customer retention and customer satisfaction, and then ultimately in the health of the business. So you're going to enjoy that clip, and then it'll be followed up by kind of a different sort of clip that's a lot of old boys reminiscing, fun talk of my buddy Pete Bachman and I getting together on the podcast, and we do a lot of college talk, which is really cool. But shout out to Pete because I know that he's making big things happen out there with the Pebble Beach Links Trust. So enjoy both of these clips and keep a lookout for us out this winter at all the conferences and trade shows. You're gonna, and also academies, so if you're looking to attend an EarthWorks Academy, check our website. You'll see where we're gonna be, but also talk to your EarthWorks distributor. And let's make this a, no pun intended, grassroots thing. So ask for the academy and we'll come to town. The circus is coming to town and you should be there. So Check us out, enjoy the clips, and then also be sure to tune in next week for a good holiday wrap-up EarthWorks podcast with the whole EarthWorks team. We just recorded it, and it was a great time. All right, everybody, enjoy. Thanks so much.
So there's an education piece that I felt was lacking, and that's kind of what we started to work towards with our customers, is educating them about the process. You know what I mean? So there's a lot there, but it really came from complaints. That's kind of where the questions started to come. Why are we getting these phone calls? Because if you want to have like a really good reputation, you know, you got to provide the kind of service that people can't even dream of leaving your company, you know?
Absolutely. So what are some examples of some complaints? Like what would be something that you'd hear?
Well, in our area, disease management is number one.
Okay.
The brown spots, and so brown spots obviously can happen. You know, we some clients will call after we do an herbicide application, their weeds are dying, you know, and they'll be like, brown spots. Well, that's going to happen. You know, I mean, they got discoloration.
But you'd get out there and find it was brown patch.
Yeah, totally. Mm-hmm. And one of the things we pretty much in our area, in 10 years, I've only seen Pythium twice, but we see mainly dollar spot, brown patch. We saw some rust this year. It's pretty much the same type of pathogens around.
Red thread in the spring.
Exactly.
Sort of thing. Yeah.
Yeah, and so and fungicides are a pretty, you know, premium product in terms of cost. And I think that on the residential side, we do all residential.
Mm-hmm.
We used to do commercial and whatnot. That's another thing that we changed. And it really, you know, that was kind of the mindset when we started to really dial in the program, was really kind of looking at those complaints. So bare spots, brown spots, just overall like thin turf, you know, problem areas, whether it was from, you know, addressing where we couldn't grow grass, if it was excessive shade, if it was standing water. So it was really just going and evaluating, you know, each property. And initially, one of the things that we implemented right away when I started working with Scott was doing soil testing.
Yeah.
That had never been done. In the state of Virginia, there's different laws that govern each state, which is, you know, on a side note, a little ridiculous because the benefits, you know, whatnot are universal. So we wanted to separate ourselves early on. And so that's we started doing soil tests on an annual basis.
Mm-hmm.
And so when we first started getting our first batch of soil tests, we had, I'd say 85 to 90% of our properties had pHs of excess of 7. I mean, like 7. I mean, they were way out of whack. And it's because when I looked at the history, man, all we ever did was lime.
Yes.
You know, we had a little soil, like not a probe, but this kind of a meter that would check the pH. It has like a little dial on it. And, you know, we'd go out and pop it in there and that was it. And, you know, if it was low on pH, we'd put lime in, but not really understanding, you know, the science behind it and what it does over time and the whole balancing aspect. You know, we weren't necessarily doing the right things, you know, for what we needed to do. We were literally offering clients what they wanted without telling them what they needed.
What I love about looking at your soil tests over time is how when we started, there was outliers and they were all on either side of the curve. Mm-hmm. And over time, each site got so consistent with the other, you know, between calcium magnesium ratio, phosphorus, organic matter, sodium, like they just started to reflect each other as opposed to all being wildly different. So you saw that the program that you were implementing was bringing everything into balance. It's a really cool long-term case study.
Yeah, no doubt, man. It's been I think it's been almost a decade, man, and it really has. That's actually, Scott and I were looking at that this year. They're so consistent over the past couple of years. And that's the thing that we had to really balance, you know, not to use a pun, man, but like, you know, you have to balance kind of what you are able to sell to a client on a residential side. You're not going to be able to, like when I talk to clients about bringing them on, like we really promote just kind of on a side note saying, hey, listen, go and watch the Masters or go look at what Augusta looks like.
Mhm.
That's arguably the most controlled like landscape environment in the country. Okay.
Yes.
They get all the top talent that volunteers down there that's shut down 9 months out of the year. You got irrigation, extremely high budget. They got
Millions of dollars of technology.
everything. Yeah. And you can see it. I mean, it's a beautiful, my uncle's a huge golfer and has been. I've watched the Masters every year since I was a kid.
Mhm.
And before I even knew about grass, you know what I mean? And so that's kind of what we tell people is we want to make your lawn look like that, but on a residential quote unquote scale. So when it came to the soil testing and dialing those in and getting those things, really what we were going to address, we can only say, this is what we're going to address. Otherwise, we're not going to be able to sell it. You know what I mean? It's just going to be too pricey.
Yes.
And so, but we really, over time, again, over the years, we phased out all the other programs and eliminated them. We kept shrinking and shrinking, tweaking the program, and, adding carbon in. That's another thing we haven't really talked about. I mean, really how, initially we started using one carbon product to replace something that was discontinued in the summer.
Okay.
We started using the 545, and it was just became our foundational product in the program and in all the programs, regardless of the budget. As we kept going and looking at the soil tests, we said, okay, we just need to really focus on the basics and the foundation, just like the company. Like, our foundation of our company is our renewals every year, man. Like we have very loyal customers. I've got great customers, man. They've been stuck with us, and that's the nucleus, right? So next to that is like, well, what's the service offering? We need to make sure that, the foundation of what we're doing is right. And so over time, we just kind of eliminated all the crap basically and said, we're not going to do this stuff. We're going to do this because we know what we're talking about. You know what I mean?
So you made decisions with your own budget to kind of eliminate the items that you would rather spend that budget dollar towards something more beneficial.
Yeah, absolutely.
And you brought down overall nutrient levels in the programs as well too.
Yeah, we probably put out at this point, we put out half of what other people do in terms of because the plant doesn't require it. I think the biggest thing that I have learned is just how little plants need from us. Like you really don't need to manipulate it.
No.
If you got good soil, water, and sun, they're okay.
Yes, yeah. You don't need to over-engineer some man-made program. You just have to get on the path with nature and let nature do the rest.
Absolutely. I firmly believe that. In fact, that's really, really just an incredible like concept when you think about like a residential lawn, or any lawn in an urban environment is a monostand, man. It doesn't exist anywhere in nature, anywhere. So you're trying to control something that, doesn't exist anywhere in the natural world. So what you're trying to get rid of are pests. So, and a lot of people really don't recognize that you're dealing with a living organism. It's sick, it's subject to stress, it's got all this other stuff going on. So we just said, we know all this stuff, and it's our job to communicate it. And if people want to tap into what we're doing, then those are the people we want to work with. If they don't, we totally respect that, but we can't do it another way. Because I think that for me, like once I knew this stuff, I couldn't go backwards. I'm like, if this is like legit, then I'm not going to like really try to sell somebody something and just not be authentic, man. Like I don't want to.
You're an authentic guy.
I just don't want to be that guy. You know what I mean? Like I'm just not. I just didn't want like reputation is key, man. You know what I mean? And I think that
you mentioned that already. Like it was part of taking over your father's business. That and it instilled in you that this reputation. It's not only my reputation, but I've now got my father's reputation here too. It bears his name.
Yeah, no, and definitely like I was without question like the underdog coming into the situation. Like I had not, never like haven't always like lived on the straight and narrow. You know what I mean? Like I definitely, went to the school of hard knocks. You know what I'm
Yeah.
saying? And it's crazy just how all this stuff, kind of comes to fruition and kind of, how your life kind of plays out. I had little kids. I just got married, and so I really was thinking about like, man, I've got, lives I want to be a better example for them. You know what I mean? I don't want them to like grow up and like think their dad was a chump. You know what I mean? So I'm like, whatever I'm going to do, I want to put whatever it is. I want to be at the top of the game. And and I think for me, like, it wasn't really being about having the most clients. Like, we're never going to be that company. I wasn't concerned about how much we grossed. I really just wanted to be the best at what we did, and working with Scott over the years, I without question believe that we are at this point.
Well, it's something to be said about that. You are a small business that provides a paycheck for a lot of people. It's a wonderful thing. Like it's your livelihood, but you're providing a livelihood for other people. It's great, and
Yeah.
it's that reputation as well. You've got other people on board here. You need to be profitable.
Yeah.
So that's kind of the risky thing when you make these changes. You're taking risks. How you mentioned that you've got great customer retention,
Yeah.
which but how else are you ensuring that you're profitable and meeting these expectations, that you keep that customer retention and that you keep the company moving?
Well, that's something actually me and my brother. So I own the company with my brother.
Mm-hmm.
And, when we bought it again, there was a lot of cultural stuff in the company that we had to overcome. Again, like there was not a lot of people that were jacked up about the changes I wanted to make. I definitely was a little arrogant early on and really, wanted to prove to everybody that I was was the right guy to run the show,
Mm-hmm.
and so there was a lot of risk involved in some of the things. And I definitely am. I think that at any level, man, there's going to be people that are going to not understand what you do. You know what I mean, or what you want to do. And I think that I tried really hard initially to bring everybody on board, and then a lot of people didn't, understand it or really didn't want to understand it. And so, I just had to figure out a way to deal with that. And so I just really believed in what I was doing and really the direction we were taking. And so, on our end, financially, we definitely needed to be profitable or at least be break even at this point. We had we had to buy my dad out. Like, it wasn't given to us. We had to, take over a lot we had to assume the role of the business, our accounting. My dad kept records differently than I looked at stuff. That was another thing that I work with a company now that, LMN, I'll plug them just since I'm on here, man. They are a software company out of Canada, and they, I went to literally the winter that I bought the company, right before that, I did a workshop with these guys, and one of the things that they offer is a budgeting side. And so that's really, they took me to school there too. And so
Agronomics and economics, man.
yeah, it's the truth. And that's, it's funny. That's like Scott, like, I've heard that saying from Scott, I don't know how many times, man, and it's true, man. Like, and not having a formal, education, man, I've done, I spend a lot of time in the library, man. You know what I mean? I have, a lot of books. I read a lot. I just study people. And, bottom line, in business, you got to make the numbers work. And so, that was obviously like a challenge for us. And that just had to go with looking at the book. And so for me, I really got detailed initially in terms of looking at services that were profitable and whatnot. Making sure that we were charging accurately and covering our costs. And that was a number of we had to do some price increases initially over, the first few years, which definitely lost some people, on that end. But the biggest change that we made was combining mowing and turf together. So we don't do one without the other. That was arguably the largest change that we did.
Wow.
And that was not met with, that was met with a ton of resistance, both within the company and outside the company.
Wow.
Guys that I had talked to that I was kind of like, throwing it around with before we made the change were like, you're crazy. Like other lawn care guys, like, you're crazy for doing that. Like that's all anybody wants to do is mowing. And but internally, people are like, man, you're going to lose a lot of guys. Like you're going to, it's just a bad decision all the way around. You can't just do, you can't not just do mowing. You know what I mean?
So why did you insist?
Why did I insist?
Yes.
Because honestly, I feel at the end of the day, there's only one way to grow grass. I mean, like you can talk about all these different factors, but unless you manage all of them, you're not going to grow grass. And mowing is technically a stress on the plant.
Yeah,
so you're not.
And it's happening. It's happening how many times a year, right?
Yeah, it's happening 30 sometimes a year.
Exactly.
You're never letting it allow. You can't. It won't push a seed head, so you can't propagate by itself, right?
Mm-hmm.
So you got to plant seed. You know what I mean? You only got a certain amount of lifespan on that plant. Period. If it's healthy, okay. So, and living in the Mid-Atlantic, when you're cutting grass, if you're cutting grass on a treated property, it's going to be clean. If you're cutting grass on somebody that property that's not been treated, you're going to potentially take spores and weed seeds under the mower deck and go to the next house.
Wow.
So, we were thinking about this, and Scott and I just really talked a lot about this all the time. I mean, I called Scott so many times, man. Really, initially, I can't even tell you, man. Like, I felt like I was on the phone with him almost on a daily basis, man.
Yeah.
And
that's the level of generosity that we're talking
no,
about.
he really is, and that's why. I mean, I'm very loyal to him, man. That's why, and I really have to give him credit, man, because I wouldn't have known any of this stuff. He wouldn't have introduced me to you guys. I wouldn't have really had the same kind of approach. And that's really when I say, the reason why I push for it is because I think as a professional, people want to talk to us because they don't know about what they want. And so if they have a need for something, it's our job to educate them on what we do. And so I can't tell you what company A, B, or C does because I don't know, and I honestly don't care. I'm only focused on what I do and making sure that, what I do is putting out a good product. And if people want to tap into what we're doing, I'm all about it.
And that it's good for your customers, yourself, and your employees.
Yeah, and it's good for the environment as well. I mean, I feel like that's a huge push that a lot of, I think that's a misunderstood concept when I say it's good for the environment. We do use chemicals in the program because you have to.
Mm-hmm.
There's really not a way to get around that. However, you can reduce how much you put out.
Mm-hmm.
You can also reduce, you can really create a better turf stand, that's going to have a deeper root system, a thicker root system. It's going to filter all that crap out better.
Mm-hmm.
It's going to drain better. It's going to do all this stuff. And so
sequester carbon dioxide from the air down into the ground to build humus, topsoil, and lock that CO2 down in there.
Yeah.
All the benefits that you can read about a really good turf stand only happen when you have a really good turf stand, right?
Yeah.
So if you have like a dead or dying lawn, it doesn't help the environment.
Right.
You need to grow a vigorous plant, and that requires maintenance.
Yeah, that's the main thing. And so the mowing, without question, was big. We lost 50% of our mowing because of that. I mean, that was a huge blow, like from a financial. And like, dude, my brother was not about this at all. And when you have like I said, I love my brother, but we're very different as we approach the business, and I just wasn't going to back down because I didn't want to be just an average company.
What year was this?
So we decided, really what we did was we decided to go to one program in 2017. So one of the things about working in our industry is you can't really make changes mid-year.
Mm-hmm.
A contract, you already got stuff dialed in. It's just too much. It's just, you can't do it.
Right.
So you got to wait till the following year to implement whatever change you're going to implement. And you got to kind of wait and see how well your decision makes, you know?
That's right.
So so in 2017, we cut out everything and went to one program, and it included mowing. And then you can't do one without the other.
And that's the Paul's Best program there.
That's the Paul's Best program, man. And that's what it is. And so it doesn't deviate. And the way that we tweak it and we customize it to each lawn is based on what the soil test gives us.
Perfect.
So, and obviously new clients are going to potentially require more. And so we kind of tailor a first year customer a little bit differently. And maybe we'll load them up on carbon a little heavier initially in the first year, or, you know, whatever, kind of just talking about where they're at. But ideally what you're doing is you're bringing on a client that wants to work with you, and we don't give people a time frame. We do, but what we say is that it's going to be a 24 to 36 month turnaround.
Beautiful.
I mean, you can't rush it. If you're going to rush it, take out your grass and sod it.
Yes.
Okay?
Yeah.
Like, I mean, like you can do that if you want to do that.
Yeah. If you want to spend 15 grand at one time,
Right.
go ahead.
Yeah. And I mean, and so when we did that, it really raised a lot of eyebrows. I mean, a lot of people were like, you're nuts for doing that. But the way that I look at it, and anybody that owns a business that does mowing, if you look at your numbers, the mowing is it's like single digit profit, if that.
Okay.
And it's the most expensive service to offer. You got guys in the truck, you got the most machines in the truck, you got the most driving, it's wear and tear in your trucks.
Yep.
If it rains or get behind, it really just takes up a lot to do it.
Hello, Pete. Welcome to the EarthWorks podcast.
Hey, Jack. Happy to be here. It's good to see you, man.
Dude, thank you for coming on. I'm going to let the listener know that we were about 4 minutes in on the conversation, and I just said, yo, Pete, you're on a roll, but stop, dude. I forgot to press record.
Well, we did go to public school and we did go to a state school. So there were some extracurriculars we were involved in. Jack.
Oh my gosh. Okay, so let's fill everyone in. We are on this podcast because it's a bit of a 15-year reunion for you and I. Coming into next year will be 15 years since you and I both graduated together from Penn State. That was in the spring of 07.
Yeah, and I think if there's any professors listening to this, they won't be surprised by our false start.
We had a good time, dude. We had a good time. We're just about getting into that part of the conversation, but we were reminiscing because, like, we're still here. We're still working in this turf industry, so it's a bit of a pat on your back, pat on my back. We're happy to be doing this, right?
Yeah, it was a battle, but we're here.
It was a battle, but we're here. So we met in right away freshman year at Penn State, and we had a cool, interesting thing going on because there was a small crew of us that all started at Penn State at the main campus and were declared turf majors. We wound up graduating with, like, I think 100 guys in our program, or 75 thereabouts.
That's about right. It was a big class.
It was a big class, but we started just a crew of 6.
Yeah. Yeah. And everybody had an interesting story as to how they wound up at main campus as a freshman. I think most of the guys started in a different major and then decided they wanted to get into turf. And then there was just maybe me and you and one other that had actually declared turf and had somehow gotten into main campus for some odd reason, because most of the freshmen, if you declared turf, you got sent to Burke's campus or Branch campus.
Exactly. Yeah. I think maybe the eastern or maybe the western side of PA guys went to what is the one in Erie called, I think, the Great Barron, the Barron campus, something like that.
Yeah.
Yeah, so a couple shout outs because a lot of these guys we still talk to and are still working in the industry as well. From the west side of the state was Zach Nicoludis and Brian Flaherty. And Flaherty I still call on. He's the superintendent at South Hills, which is a cool old property, actually. Reminds me a lot of where you were at San Jose, because it's a little 100-acre property, kind of urban, kind of stocked in there. It was cool. Zach is the USGA agronomist in Columbus.
Right.
your old boy Fitz.
Yep. Is moving boxes now.
We're gonna get into that.
Yeah.
Let's see. And then from the east side of the state, you're from Hershey,
Right.
right?
Yeah.
From the east side of the state was Bob and I, and we established that neither one of us have heard from Bob in a while.
No.
And I haven't reached out to Bob either. But I actually think about Bob a lot because he worked for Brickman when we first got out of college.
Right.
And he had a tough go of it with them, I know.
Yeah, and then he was doing some startup stuff for a little while, and he had some great ideas. And I don't know, it's Bob. I'm sure he's doing something cool.
He's doing something good. He was a smart kid, big time.
Oh yeah,
big time. We
Yeah.
all were, and so you were getting into this. We all were. We all still are. We're doing all right, but you were getting into the fact that, yes, it was very difficult to get into Penn State, to be out there in State College as a freshman, particularly in this turf.
Right. Right. There was a lot of kind of opinion as to whether or not you should declare turf as a freshman if you really wanted to get into main campus. Some people said, "Oh, go undeclared. There's a better chance you'll get into main, and then you can declare after your second year." And I didn't really know any of this stuff. And I had my mind made up in high school that I wanted to do this turf thing and try it out. So I declared. And of course, they accepted me to the Berks campus.
Yes.
And so at the time, I just remember my dad saying, "Well, if we're going to pay Penn State tuition, you're not going to a branch campus." And
not to mention, we made out, right? I mean,
Yeah.
Your parents, my parents, it was a good value compared to what college is today.
Oh my God! Looking at the increase in what tuition costs, I can't even fathom it. And I'm really blessed, and my parents worked so hard their entire lives to try and save money to be able to send me to college. I was able to graduate with very little debt. But I just remember my dad saying that, and he went to Penn State. And so he was a big believer in you got to go to main campus for the experience, for the culture, for everything that main campus has that the branch campuses don't have. And so looking back on that, I think, yeah, he was right. Like,
for sure,
you're going to pay Penn State tuition, you want to go to main campus.
Yeah,
and
we were blessed with that as well too, man. Like you said, we've got a very blessed career, you and I. Like,
yeah, no, absolutely. And so at the time, my dad, he's from State College. He went to high school there.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah, he went to Penn State, did the whole thing, and he still knows a lot of people in town, his old buddies and stuff like that. And so he was just poking around, trying to figure out, like, well, how are you going to get to main? What can you do? And he was also in the blue bands for a couple of years when he was in college. Mm-hmm. And I played the trumpet in high school through junior year, and then I think senior year I quit. I had enough of it. I wanted to focus on sports and golf and doing this other stuff. And my dad found out that the blue band had the ability to transfer like up to 4 or 5 students a year from a branch campus to main campus if you tried out for the blue band and made the band.
Okay.
Yes, you had to try out, but you're trying out against, sophomores and juniors and seniors, because you had to try out every year. It wasn't just you try out once and you get in. You had to try out every single year and you had to place. And so there were, I played trumpet, and I think they took 50 or some a year. And so there were probably 75 that tried out, something like that.
Yeah.
And so my dad finds this out, and he's like, "Hey, you start polishing on, dust off your trumpet and start practicing.
Get out the valve oil, man, because
start practicing and see if you can make the band, and then you'll get to main campus if you're good enough." And I was like, "Oh man!" And I had not played for a long time. I was like, "Oh, this is So I had to like get back into shape. And if anybody that's listening has ever played a brass instrument or any kind of instrument, you can't just stop and start. It's like you got to build up your embouchure and all this kind of stuff, right?
There
and
you go.
forget the notes.
Yeah, and not just to be on the stage, but marching band where you're marching around.
You're bouncing around and all this stuff. You know, it's hard. And so I practiced and pulled out some old tryout pieces I did for like when I was trying out for county band that I never made county band. But I practiced for a while, and I placed like something ridiculous in the top like 8 seats or something.
Oh my gosh, you're a clutch trumpeter, dude. You're clutch.
I came through and made the band. They transferred me to main campus, so that's how I got there freshman year. And so I played in the band. So part of the deal was you got to give the bands a year. You got to give them at least a year. If the, you know.
Yeah, I imagine, because I this was news to me when you brought this up, because I don't remember you. Maybe it sounded familiar actually when you said it, so maybe I do remember you being in the band. But so you played freshman year.
So I played freshman year, and I played sophomore year too. But then classes, our turf schedule was so limited when classes were offered, and you know I wasn't too like into the whole band scene to begin with. That just really wasn't my makeup, but I did enjoy it while I did it. It was a pretty awesome experience to come out of the tunnel in front of 110,000 screaming people for a night game against Ohio State. I mean, there's not many people outside of, you know, football players and cheerleaders that get to run out of that tunnel in front of 110,000 people. Yeah, so that was pretty neat.
Not even us guys that fill in the divots get to do that.
No, yeah, right. Right. And then that was the other thing too, because then I got a part-time job on the grounds crew. I wanted to do that. I didn't really want to do that. Yeah. So man, this is bringing back so many good memories.
Oh yeah. This is a fun, that's what I'm saying. This is a nice little reunion for us on Friday, you know? So okay. So that's the way you got there freshman year. Yep. And so I think we all probably had similar stories. Like I said, I made it by the skin of my teeth, I know. And so, but there was this core of us that became friends, and we met in classes, and we really supported each other straight through till graduation. I think in a unique and cool way, like, because we weren't like at the hip all the time. We weren't hanging out all the time extracurricular. Everyone did their own thing. But when it came to school, both the turf classes and quite often the general ed classes, we did them together. Yeah. And it was great. Totally.
It was great. Yeah, we scheduled everything, and I mean, all the late night sessions at the Health and Human Development building.
Yes, that was one of our favorites.
The only reason we went there was literally the closest room we could find to off-campus housing, where we could go meet. That was open late.
Yeah, I forgot all about that room, but yeah, it was right there off of College Avenue in like the southern bit of campus, and yeah, we'd all meet there and get our work done.
Yeah.
And like, if someone was like, we remind each other of like, dude, don't forget about that giant project that's due next week. You're like, oh wow, I did forget about that.
It definitely took a village.
It took a village.
Yeah.
Even in turf, dude. I mean, it's an accomplishment. It's a damn accomplishment. So yeah, it was exciting. One note I have here to talk about in regards to us taking classes together was that I believe all 6 of us were like the inaugural class of this new program, this a minor in Spanish for the ag college. So it was like an agriculturally focused Spanish class.
Yeah, and I don't remember how we even found out about it, to be honest, but we all learned about it, and of course, you know, we thought it was, well, this makes sense because we're all going to come out of school and work with Spanish-speaking employees, no matter where we go.
We already had been, right? Like we
already had been. We knew there was a value, and I think we all probably were looking to maybe take a Spanish class, and why not take a class that was specifically tailored to students in the College of Agriculture, basically focusing your communication on practical field communication, and also learning the culture. You know, Profe Boris was very focused on us learning the culture because he knew that if you knew something about your employees' culture, they would have a higher level of respect for you, and that is certainly true. And that was probably the biggest takeaway from that program for me, and still plays true today. You know.
I'm sure. Yeah, I'm sure. Yeah, you're right. There were two focuses in the class. One was to be communicative, just period.
Yeah.
It kind of communicate at any cost. It doesn't have to be perfect, but you have to be able to communicate your ideas. And in that, there was a major focus on pronunciation, like pronounce the word the right way, or else it's just going to go right by the person you're talking to.
Right.
So yeah, I remember that. And then, yes, like you said, like really learn the culture and appreciate it and relate that way. It was very important. Okay, so I think we started junior year at this, and we were the first.
We were.
We helped Profe kind of develop that program.
Yep.
But it culminated with a trip to Mexico, right?
Right. That was the immersion trip.
Yes, and I didn't get the minor. I didn't complete it because I didn't go on the trip.
Right.
I was going. I left the day after we graduated to go to St. Andrews for 6 months. So,
Right.
Yeah. So that was me. I couldn't complete it. But you went to Mexico, didn't you?
I did. I went to Mexico. Fitz and Zach went to Mexico.
Yeah.
And that was a blast. We were there for a month. I mean, we spent 3 weeks at a language institute in Cuernavaca, Mexico, and then 1 week in a remote town called Buena Vista Celular that I think was maybe an hour or two south of Cuernavaca. I don't really remember the exact location, but we're talking small town, like population of 1,000. Nobody speaks any English. There's chickens and dogs running around the streets, but beautiful. And Cuernavaca is an incredible city.
Where is that in Mexico? Is it?
It's south. It's about 2 hours outside of Mexico City, as I recall. It was like a 2-hour bus ride or so.
Okay, cool.
Yeah. And I mean, land of eternal spring, they call it, because
yes,
it's like springtime year round. It's just beautiful weather. And
it was probably up at some altitude too, at some elevation.
I believe it was. Yeah.
Yeah, because Mexico City is like 5,000 feet or something like that.
Right. Yeah.
Interesting.
It was an incredible experience. I mean, we lived with families, and they cooked us food every night. Just it was an amazing cultural immersion, and I learned a lot from it. I retained a lot more Spanish because of that immersion, and actually being forced to speak it to communicate. And then just the things that you learn about the Mexican culture and Latin American culture that have benefited me through the years, even just as a topic of conversation with someone, a crew member, and you see their eyes light up when you tell them that you lived in Mexico for a month.
It shows that you invested, like you invested in them, and you took the time to really learn more about their culture. Yeah, it says a lot about you, so it's cool. Did Profe go on that trip?
He did. Yep.
Oh yeah, dude.
He did.
Great.
Yeah, talk about a kid in the candy store.
Oh, I bet that. So I wonder if that program's still going on. It was a great idea.
It was. I hope so. If it is, and there's any students listening, I'd highly encourage them looking into it.
Yep. Was it in the College of Ag, or was it in? I don't really remember if it was like.
Yeah, I think it was through the College of Ag, and
I think it was
sort of lived in this weird gray area, and I think that's why Profe had so much trouble gaining traction and support, financial support from the university for the program, because it was just sort of this tweener thing. But It was awesome.
Yeah, it was awesome. Yeah. Highly encourage anybody that is a student or knows a student to look into that, because it was because it's so practical in our everyday work, particularly in your everyday work.
Absolutely.
So let's see. You mentioned that you worked for the university on the Beaver Stadium grounds crew. I worked with you, and we had a blast.
Yeah. we had some great, that union crew was just what a great bunch of characters.
Absolutely. And it was also another really incredible learning experience. Like it was a whole different kind of work environment as opposed to the Spanish speaking crew work environment. But it was a whole different kind of work environment that's equally as important and applicable out there in the industry.
100%. And it was a union environment, so that kind of exposed us to a different structure that we may wind up dealing with in the future at our various jobs. And so that was a really neat learning experience, just to see how that was set up and how it was run.
Yeah, there were rules that to a 19-year-old kid like us might have seemed arbitrary, but I quickly recognized that whether I thought they were arbitrary or not, they were very important, and it meant something to this work environment. So don't mess with it.
Yeah, respect it.
Exactly.
And as long as the students respected those rules, I mean, those guys would bring you under their wing and teach you and show you every little thing you could possibly imagine that you didn't know about sports turf. I mean, some of the just salt of the earth people, Paul Curtis. I mean,
Absolutely.
What a guy.
What a guy. Yeah. And yeah, Paul and everybody on that crew, both the union guys and the wage payroll students like us, it was another great opportunity to make great friends and real bonds, that last, and we find each other working together 15 years later.
That's right. Those were some of the fondest memories from college, for sure.
Just this morning, I was on the phone with Kyle Hilligis, who graduated with us. He's the superintendent up at Knickerbocker Country Club in Bergen County, right outside of New York City. So we're out there, and it's nice that we have this connection.